Welcome to another episode of the AI-driven Swebbcast. The source content is all Swebb, but the interpretation and presentation is all AI.
Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive with us. Today, we're really excited to be taking a look at this blog post by Swebb. It's called Stop Feeding the Wildlife, A Simpler Path.
I love that title.
Yeah, it's very evocative. For those of you who haven't heard of Swebb before, he's got kind of a long and varied background in church leadership and also as a coach and consultant. And
yeah, he's got a very interesting background.
He does. And what I really found fascinating about this particular blog post was how he challenges a lot of assumptions I think we all have about how to engage with audiences, whether that's in a church context, a business context, or even just in our personal lives.
And what's so interesting about his approach is, he argues that this sort of constant push for more engagement, more actually ends up being counterproductive.
Yeah, it's like a hamster wheel. You just keep running and running and running.
You're not really getting anywhere,
Exactly. And so he uses this really compelling analogy, I thought, to illustrate this point. He calls it feeding the wildlife.
Right. And basically the idea is when you constantly engage with people, it's like feeding wild animals. At first it seems helpful, maybe even kind, but it can actually lead to dependence.
Right, yeah. It's almost like we're creating this artificial ecosystem where people become reliant on these handouts and they lose the ability to actually thrive independently.
That's exactly right. And I think that's what makes this analogy so powerful is that we've all seen those signs, in parks, don't feed the animals.
Right.
And so he takes that very familiar concept and applies it to how we engage with people. And I think it's a really interesting way to frame it.
It is, and it really makes you question, so if constant engagement isn't the answer, then what is?
Right. That's the big question because we're told all the time, right? Post more email, be more present, be on social media all the time.
Yeah, be everywhere all the time.
Exactly. So it feels very counterintuitive to pull back and do less.
Well, and that's exactly what Swebb did.
He claims to have achieved really significant success in his own life by working less, not more.
And he has some pretty incredible examples of this. He talks about, his time at Elevation Church, where he was actually able to thrive and help them build multiple campuses while only working 25 hours a week.
Yeah.
And then he talks about his coaching practice and how he maintains a full roster of clients without being on social media constantly.
And he runs a thriving business without bombarding people with, marketing emails every day.
It's mind-blowing. Especially in today's always-on culture, right? Where we're expected to be available 24/7.
Right.
It's almost like he's found this secret formula.
It's like he's cracked the code.
Yeah, exactly. And it really makes you wonder, have we all gotten caught up in this frenzy of activity without really questioning whether it's actually effective?
And I think the deeper question is there a point where engagement actually becomes counterproductive?
Mm-hmm.
Does constantly providing answers prevent people from asking their own questions?
Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting way to look at it.
Maybe by stepping back a little bit, we create the space for people to actually lean in and engage on a deeper level.
It's fascinating because I'm already starting to rethink my own approach to, how I engage with my audience with my work.
Right.
So if Swebb is advocating for, maybe doing a little bit less, what does he see as the true drivers of success?
Well, he actually lays out 3 core principles, and he calls them honoring and fearing God, adding value, and settling down.
Okay, so let's unpack those a little bit, starting with honoring and fearing God. I imagine this stems from his faith, right?
Right. That's a big part of his worldview.
But how does that translate to a more practical level, for someone who might not share his religious beliefs?
I think it's about having a deeper purpose driving your actions. It's about grounding your work in something bigger than yourself.
So it's about having that sense of, integrity and service.
Exactly.
Rather than just chasing after superficial gains.
Right. It's about being driven by something more meaningful than just, likes and follows.
I like that. And that ties into his second principle, right? Adding value.
Right.
So it's not just about creating noise or filling up space.
Yeah. It's about truly serving your audience, whether that's your congregation, your customers, or even just your friends and family.
So it's about quality over quantity.
Exactly. Fewer, more impactful actions driven by a deeper sense of purpose.
Okay. I'm starting to see the pattern here, but what about settling down?
That was particularly interesting.
Yeah. I'm not sure I fully grasp what he means by that.
Well, in a world that prizes hustle and constant striving, settling down feels almost radical.
Right.
It's about embracing patience, trusting the process, and resisting the urge to constantly control and manipulate outcomes.
So in the context of his feeding the wildlife analogy, it's about creating an environment where people can thrive on their own.
Exactly.
Drawn in by genuine value rather than a constant stream of handouts.
Right. It's about fostering a sense of self-sufficiency and genuine connection rather than creating the cycle of dependence.
It's a fascinating concept, and it really does challenge a lot of our assumptions about success and growth.
It does.
So, I'm definitely hooked. I'm starting to see how these principles might apply not just to big things like leading a church or running a business, but also to everyday interactions and relationships.
Yes.
What do you think is Swebb onto something here, or is this just another, self-help fad?
I don't think so. I really don't. I think there's a real depth to his ideas, and honestly, they resonate with a lot of what we're seeing in terms of burnout and disillusionment with the hustle culture.
Yeah.
Maybe this craving for a simpler path is a sign that we're starting to reevaluate what truly matters, you know?
It's an interesting thought.
It's interesting you bring up burnout because I think a lot of people are feeling that these days, that pressure to constantly be on and never miss a beat.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've definitely felt it myself, and it makes you wonder, what if stepping back actually allows us to be more effective in the long run, like Swebb is suggesting?
I think it's definitely possible. When you're constantly bombarded with information and demands, it's hard to focus on what's truly important.
Right.
So maybe by creating some space, by settling down, we can actually tap into a deeper level of creativity and productivity.
That makes sense. I'm starting to see how this could apply, on a practical level. Instead of sending out a flurry of emails every day, maybe I should focus on crafting fewer, more meaningful messages.
Exactly. Or instead of trying to be on every social media platform, maybe you choose one or two and really cultivate a presence there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Be more intentional with where you're showing up.
Right. And I think that's where the adding value principle comes in. It's not just about doing less. It's about doing less of what doesn't matter so you can do more of what does.
So it's about being strategic and really focusing your energy on the things that are going to have the biggest impact. Okay, I'm starting to get the bigger picture here, but I'm wondering how this all translates to specific areas of life.
Right.
Let's say you're a church leader, trying to engage your congregation.
Yeah.
How do you apply these principles without losing momentum or connection?
Well, I think that's where the shift from quantity to quality becomes crucial. Instead of relying on constant events to keep people engaged, maybe you focus on creating fewer, more impactful experiences.
Okay, so it's not about abandoning events altogether.
No, not at all.
But being more thoughtful about how you're using them.
Right. Events that truly nourish people's souls and leave a lasting impression. And the same goes for communication. Instead of bombarding people with emails and announcements, you could curate your messages to make sure they're providing real value and fostering genuine connection.
So it's about being more intentional with every interaction.
Exactly.
I can see how this approach could also be really effective in a business context, especially when it comes to marketing and sales. We're constantly told to get in front of as many eyeballs as possible. But what if a more targeted, less is more approach actually yields better results, like Swebb suggests?
Well, I think it ties back to the idea of building trust and authenticity. Instead of blasting out generic messages to everyone, you focus on building genuine relationships with your ideal clients, providing them with valuable insights and solutions that truly meet their needs.
So it's like becoming a trusted advisor rather than just another salesperson.
Exactly. And that takes time and patience. Which brings us back to the settling down principle. It's about resisting the urge to push for immediate results and instead focusing on nurturing those long-term relationships built on mutual respect and understanding.
It's funny. We often equate busyness with productivity and success.
Right, we do.
But what if true success lies in being more deliberate, more focused, and more patient?
I think it's a radical shift in perspective, but one that could lead to greater fulfillment and more sustainable results in the long run.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Swebb himself. He seems like a bit of a maverick. Someone who's not afraid to challenge conventional wisdom and forge his own path.
Yeah, he definitely strikes me as someone who walks his talk, and I think that's what makes his message so compelling.
Right.
He's not just preaching a theory, he's living it. And the results he's achieved, building multiple church campuses while working 25 hours a week, for example, are pretty remarkable.
That's what caught my attention, too. It's like he's found this secret formula for success that defies everything we're told we should be doing, and yet he's not keeping it a secret. He's sharing his insights, openly inviting others to join him on this simpler path.
Yeah, it's refreshing, and I think it speaks to his genuine desire to help others find greater fulfillment and purpose in their lives. He's not promising a quick fix, but rather a different way of thinking and being that can lead to lasting transformation.
Yeah, it really is inspiring to see someone actually living out these principles and achieving those kinds of results. It makes you wonder, what could we accomplish if we shifted our focus, from constant activity to more intentional action?
I think it really makes you rethink the whole definition of success. Maybe it's not about being the loudest or the busiest, but about making a real impact, however quiet or understated that may be.
And I think that's what really resonated with me most about Swebb's message. It's a call to step back from the frenzy and reconnect with what truly matters.
Yeah.
It's about finding that simpler path, even if it goes against the grain of what we're told we should be doing.
Right. It's about trusting in something bigger than ourselves, whether that's, a higher power, a deep sense of purpose, or simply the natural unfolding of life.
I love that, trusting in the process. It's such a powerful concept, yet so often overlooked, in our culture of instant gratification.
Exactly. And I think that's where Swebb's settling down principle comes full circle. It's about letting go of the need to control every outcome and instead embracing the journey, knowing that sometimes the greatest growth happens when we surrender to the unknown.
So for our listeners out there who are feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, or just stuck on that hamster wheel, what's the one key takeaway you'd like them to remember from this deep dive?
I'd say this: you have a choice. You can choose to keep chasing after the next thing, or you can choose to pause, reflect, and create a life that's more aligned with your values and purpose. It might not be the easiest path, but it's a path that can lead to greater fulfillment, freedom, and lasting impact.
That's beautifully said. And if you're feeling drawn to Swebb's message and want to explore these ideas further, you can find more information on his website. He offers coaching services designed to help individuals and organizations, break free from conventional wisdom and discover a simpler, more fulfilling path to success.
It's a journey worth taking.
It is.
And remember, sometimes the most profound transformations begin with a single step.
Well said. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Swebb's thought-provoking blog post. We hope it sparked some new ideas and inspired you to rethink your approach to engagement, success, and life itself.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking that simpler path.
Are you going to do something with what you just heard? Or are you just trying to be entertained? Share this episode, then connect with Swebb. Bring him to your headquarters or visit him in Austin, Texas. Swebb is a productive disruptor for leaders and teams in churches and marketplace organizations. His goal is to make you better first, make you a friend later. Swebb serves leaders and executive teams around the world, primarily focused on helping organizations maximize what they say they want to do. He drives you to execute on your expectations, even if it hurts your ego. He's not here to please everyone, nor does he seek validation. But if you're serious about elevating your leadership and team performance, you'll know where to find him. Connect with Swebb at swebb.fyi or on Instagram at swebbfyi. You doing all you said you'd do, that's what the church and the world needs.